Hi everyone, we're going to be getting started in a couple of minutes. I had a special request that if anybody wanted to say hi to anybody who's watching online, to do so right now. So if you are planning on doing that, the camera is right over there. Just quickly run over, you have about a couple minutes to wave hi and all that stuff. If you're a candidate, please make your way up to the stage so we can get started very shortly. Thanks.
You said hello to Hillary?
Hi, Hill. Hi,
Hillary. What's that?
Jeez, hold on.
Back up, back up.
Do you have some message? Do you want to say something?
Wait, love it, I'm recording.
Yeah.
Good luck on like the shirt. And she's gonna cry. Don't cry. Can she see us right now? Is she like watching? Oh. I don't know if she's seeing this. Whatever.
Hey, how are you?
Good evening and welcome to the UPUA second presidential debate. We would like to get started in basically a minute. I'm going to quickly go over a couple of ground rules and other things. First, I'm going to ask that everybody please silence their cell phones and refrain from using them, if at all possible, during the debate. The next thing is I would like to also quickly go over how this debate is going to run. It's going to be a little bit different than the last one for those of you that were here or watching. This debate is going to have slightly more of a crossfire type of style to it. How it's going to work is a question will be asked and each candidate will have, or each ticket, will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. After each ticket has responded, there will be 4 minutes of basically discussion that's going to be somewhat moderated by us. During this time of discussion, basically the tickets will be interacting with each other, discussing the question at hand. Once the 4 minutes are finished, each ticket will have 30 seconds to basically give a final remark on the question. For each question, a different candidate will be get a turn to answer the question first. For tonight also, many of these questions that we will be asking have a specific focus on a certain ticket's platform. For these, we will actually say which ticket is addressed towards, and also they will be allowed to answer the question first. So without further ado, we would like, one last thing also, we are going to actually have time cards today. Michael Pipe will be doing the timing. He has the time cards there, and as you can see, we will be giving you a 60-second warning, a 30-second warning, and a wrap-it-up warning, which will come in 10 seconds. As you can also see, they are color-coded, so hopefully that helps for those of you who might be illiterate. I'm hoping that's none of you. It looks like Mr. Kieran has a question. Unfortunately, you're going to have to pass the mic. The problem with last time was the audio was not coming out very clearly for everybody who was sitting out there, as it was only projecting out of the speakers at this end. Also, for everything on video, it was not working properly. So this way, hopefully everybody everywhere should be able to actually hear what is going on during the debate. Hopefully this will work pretty well with the moderated discussion. Obviously, if somebody's taking more of a focus, please try to pass the mic to them, but we will interject and change focus if it gets to the point where a ticket is taking all the time. So I guess at this time we will get started with the debate and the questions. The first question, the Kiran's Gupta ticket has proposed a fraternity loop service. Several voters posted questions about this on the website, including questions about funding, encouraging underage drinking, and alienating non-Greek portion of the student body. What are your feelings on this idea? And we will start with the Kiran's Gupta ticket.
Well, I like the idea because it's in the platform. I think it's a really strong idea as far as the idea of safety. It's not only Greeks who attend these fraternity parties off campus, it's not only Greeks who go to the main area of where the off-campus living is. What this will allow is for students on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night to have the opportunity to have a safe means to get home. And that's really a lot of the ideas in the campaign. It also goes back to the idea of the medical amnesty portion of the campaign. That's something I've actually had the opportunity to work on with some of the Greek leaders as well from the IFC and soon to be the Panhellenic Council and the legal affairs portion of UPUA. The idea, a lot of it is really kind of promoting, again, the idea of safety. Now, we've had the opportunity, I had one of my campaign managers meet with the CATA bus services to talk about this idea and how it could be funded. Something we also looked at is the idea of a 24-hour loop service. This service, as far as the Greek loop, was something that tried in the mid-90s, but it failed because the USG at the time didn't have a steady budget. A lot of it was due to fundraising. Starting next year, we'll have a $139,000 budget, which, as a member of the Student Activity Fee Board and as president this year, I was able to secure. So we'll have an opportunity to do some test trials in the fall semester to see if both the 24-hour loop and the Greek loop are some possibilities that are worthwhile for the student body. Thank you.
The Miller-Smith ticket.
Yes, concerning the fraternity service loop, I'm actually extremely interested in hearing the points that students have, both in, support of a fraternity loop service, but also possibly trying to find out what else is available to them. And I think that's what's important, and I think that it's important to emphasize that while, yes, some students go to fraternities, there are also other places who might also need additional bus loop service in a different area or at a different time. I think that the 24-hour loop service is a very doable idea, though I don't agree that it should be completely funded through UPUA, because while it is possible to fund it, and various meetings between UPUA and Transportation Services have found that it's able to be funded, it shouldn't necessarily eat up year after year all of UPUA's budget, which then takes away from any other services we can provide to undergraduate students. And also in terms of safety, I also understand students' concerns about a fraternity loop, a specific fraternity loop promoting drinking. Now, yes, safety always needs to be a primary concern, and I am very much for medical amnesty, but I think that it is extremely important to remember that we don't want the student government to promote the use of medical amnesty at all times, meaning we don't want our undergraduate students getting so deathly ill that they need to go to the hospital and use medical amnesty all the time. And I think that's something else to remember when you're proposing a new bus loop and proposing what it would be used for. So we need to keep in mind all undergraduates' needs and take their concerns into consideration as well.
And Paseka ticket.
Gavin raises an interesting issue in that the current bus service isn't very appropriate for student life and the student body. So I think instead of just looking at a Greek bus, we need to look at the complete CATA bus service as a whole and look at, is it really serving the needs and the wants of the student body in A, protecting students through providing safety for students, and B, being a service for students who are out at night or out during the day, and they're getting adequate transportation to and from those areas. The other issue is the 24-hour loop service. Completely in support of it. But with all these new services and all these new busing, we have to ask ourselves, where is the cost? Where is it coming from? UPUA has a budget only so large, which really truly wouldn't cover such a service. Furthermore, the university right now was talking about cutting current busing and actually having students pay for current busing. So we need to sit down with CADA and the administration collectively and look at the whole instead of just one link or one loop or one route here or there, and look at a comprehensive plan for the students and make sure the students' needs and what they need is addressed by their student representatives.
At this time, we'll move into the discussion portion of the question. If Mr. Kierans would like to first respond to what has been said, and if candidates would like to speak on the topic, please raise your hand and we'll try and switch the focus.
Sure. I just want to bring up one of the things you said is that we won't be able to afford it through our budget. When I proposed this idea, I wanted to have this brought up and looked into. Obviously, I set up a lot of meetings about a lot of my campaign ideas, so I set one of my campaign managers and the current chair of the assembly to look at this idea. Yes, we could fund it through our budget, and it would be about $40,000 in that range to fund this service. That's speaking of the 24-hour loop. The Greek loop service would probably be much cheaper because you're not talking about a 24-hour continual loop, and we're specifically talking about the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. In response to medical amnesty, obviously nobody wants there to be an occasion when students get too intoxicated, but what we're looking at is models of other universities, specifically Cornell University. When throwing this idea into my platform, I wanted to research some of the best ideas and best practices. Cornell University, they did a study, and what was found was while more research was needed, at the very least students felt more comfortable making that call, a few percent significance. So I think that there's a clear pattern. It's something that's becoming more and more popular across universities, and which is why, in my and Hillary's platform, we're really trying to look out for the safety of our student body.
Okay, since there's been a focus on the funding of this, how would the other tickets feel about UPUA actually funding us, starting with Borsig and Passaic?
Well, UPUA came up with a show cause budget for the SAF board, and the importance of the show cause budget is that you partially or mostly adhere to that budget. So I ask, where is with all this funding or spending, where is the money coming from? Are you going to cut the show cause budget that UPUA worked for this year? Are you going to increase fees, which is overtaxing the students, as there's individuals in this panel right here already increased or voted for an increase in the fees? Are you going to cut student programming? So my question is, with all these expenditures, money has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just come out of thin air. So are you going to increase fees, or are you going to cut funding from somewhere else?
In terms of funding for the buses, you obviously need to think outside the box, and assuming that fees are going to have to be raised or student programs are going to have to be cut one way or the other doesn't show a lot of creativity in finding a way to fund more buses. Now, can the UPUA budget cover 24-hour bus loops in perpetuity? Probably not. That's probably a bad idea considering that student need changes, and you don't want to tie a large portion of a budget that we just earned and a large portion of a budget that we're not going to see a huge percentage increase of anytime soon to one service. So there's multiple ways of going about this, one of which would be to look at reallocation of the fees that we already pay. And this is something that Matt and I have committed to do in our platform. We want to take a look at fees that are paid, facilities fee, student activity fee, board fee. We want to find exactly where that money is going and find out if it's actually going to where students are asking it to go. If students would rather see a 24-hour bus loop instead of a new building built with the facilities fee, then that's something to work with administrators on. Something else Matt and I have proven throughout our experience in UPUA and outside of UPUA is the capability of working with administrators. This is something that working with people can solve. We can find funding for it in a student-friendly way that doesn't cut programs, that doesn't cut the UPUA budget, and that's something Matt and I can absolutely commit to doing.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of these points brought up. One, you talk of the idea of looking into the idea of fees. As the chair of the Facilities Fee Board, as a member of the Student Activity Fee Board, as the current president of UPUA, I'm the only one that probably has the expertise and knowledge of this.
Mr. Kierans, If you want to hold this for your 30-second closing remarks, since we are at time.
Sure.
Actually, you get to start with that. I just wanted to let you know we were at time. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. And I also want to, I mean, the idea is to try this through test trials, and that's to do this in the first semester. Was brought up the idea of raising fees, cutting programs. None of that will happen. There was kind of a little stab in there about the legal services, a much-needed program for the student body that was voted on by a resolution of the UPUA and by GSA. As the president, it's my duty to take out the will of the assembly as the executive. And I've also was one of the biggest proponents against the facilities fee last year. It was in large part due to my efforts that it was stopped from being $100 a semester this year and put at $50 a semester, saving students $100 in 1 year. So I think my track record as far as cutting back on fees as implementing successful programs stands for itself. And I think that's why I am the best on this issue. Thank you.
Being the chair of the Facilities Fee Board and being a member of the Student Activity Fee Board is something that comes with being the president of the UPUA, which is something that not only one person is running for up here tonight, but there are 3. What Matt and I have proven in our experience in UPUA and outside UPUA is our ability to adapt to new roles very quickly. If we didn't feel we had an adequate understanding of the roles of these 2 boards, we wouldn't be running for this position. However, we are very confident that we will be able to assume our positions on these boards and work very adequately with issues of bus services and with issues that come up with the SAFB or with the Facilities Fee Board at any time. And we wouldn't be running for president if we didn't feel that we were capable of doing that.
And of course, take it.
Well, it's one thing to be the chair of the facilities fee, but it's another thing to be there during the creation of the fee. And last year as a student activity fee board member, I was there for the creation, and I made sure there was a student voice in that fee. I worked with administrators in making sure the students had oversight and administration of that fee. Furthermore, I've been a board member on the student activity fee, on the student activity board last year, and was proxy many times this year. And again, I practiced fiscal responsibility in that I was the only individual who voted for no increase, because that's what the student population wanted. Not because for my own goals, not because I wanted to see a success or a victory, but because what was right for the student body. And that's what we need out of a UPUA president and vice president. You need people who are selfless, who are looking at the student population. We have many goals, but if it doesn't work out, or if the concerns are greater than the need, then we need to address those concerns. And that's why we would best represent the student population.
The next question will go to the Borsig-Passaic ticket first. Both members of that ticket are highly involved in the Council of Commonwealth Student Governments. What is your stance with regards to CCSG, and how do you plan on building a transparent relationship with the 19 Commonwealth campuses?
I think this is a great opportunity to speak about our experience with the Council of Commonwealth Student Governments. Currently, I'm the Student Affairs Director for CCSG, as Catherine is the Academic Affairs Director. It's important to collaborate with CCSG and equally with GSA, the Graduate Student Association. We need to reach out to the Commonwealth campuses and work collaboratively with them. In some people's platforms, with an all-college cabinet, what happens is they want to subordinate CCSG and GSA under the UPUA president. First and foremost, that can't happen because UPUA is the undergraduate association, has no per se in graduate student affairs, and UPUA president is the University Park president, has no per se in the Commonwealth campuses. Such statements are going to have a certain amount of confrontation between individuals in GSA and CCSG. So it's important to work collaboratively with these organizations as equals, so we work for the common good and for the common goals for every student at this Penn State University.
Miller Smith.
I'm going to pass this one off to my partner, Matt Smith.
Smith and I believe very strongly in partnership with the CCSG president and the overall CCSG infrastructure. I've worked very collaboratively this year with them and their chief of staff, Matt Boyd, to develop and improve the Student Advisory Committee for ITS, which is currently helping to develop a strategy on how to bring about change with the IT fee. I've also worked with CCSG to improve their relationship with the University Registrar in order to bring a voice to the Commonwealth in their association with the Registrar. All in all, Samantha and I, in working throughout the university, have always made it a foremost goal to seek consultation with as many members and student leaders that we can come across. And CCSG is obviously vitally important to working together with the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I mean, as past president, or as the current president, I've had an opportunity to work with CCSG a lot, specifically their executive and George Corey. We've attended a lot of different meetings together, a lot of different functions, teamed up on a lot of efforts, specifically most recently this Tuition Relief Act, been members of the Student Activity Fee Board together. At times, we haven't always agreed, but what I can say is that there's a need to have spirited debate, there's a need for the Commonwealth to look out for the interests of the Commonwealth, and there's sometimes a need for University Park to look out for the interests of University Park. That's why it's really important that as UPUA president, you need to separate yourself from the CCSG model. You need to have two different separate models to kind of act as separate. We are one campus geographically dispersed, but at the same time there's issues that are specific to each geographic location, so it's important to look at that. The idea of the all-college cabinet was brought up, which I really appreciate bringing up. This is something that originally, when I sent it out as very specific, and it's more of a concept piece is what it was originally meant to be. Since that time, I've met with a plethora of student leaders, sat down with them, discussed their concerns with this. Overall, everyone likes the idea of bringing everyone to the table. The overall idea is to have a cabinet of equals to talk about the issues at hand, bring together the major, for instance, on this Tuition Relief Act was a great opportunity for us to all sit down and talk about that. Last year, the facilities fee would have been a great opportunity as well. This is kind of meant to be bringing together everybody from major governance, advocacy, diversity, philanthropy, in a coalition working for the betterment of students. Thank you.
We'll move into the discussion section.
Well, it's good to hear that we want to increase dialogue with student organizations, but sometimes in our history we haven't seen the track record. Catherine and I both have the track record of reaching out to the various student organizations and the student body and gaining their perspective. We think it's a great idea to create an infrastructure for student organizations and student governing bodies to be able to come together as equals. The problem with the current idea of the all-college cabinet is that it subordinates the other student organizations and student governing bodies. Quote, I will use straight from the platform, it is the role to be an official consultation board to the president of UPUA so that he or she can act on behalf of the entire student body. That is not the responsibility of the UPUA president. The responsibility of the UPUA president is to work for the undergraduate students at University Park. And with such writing, you're stepping on toes with UPUA and GSA, who should be our allies and not our enemies.
Mr. Cairns? And can we refocus this on CCSG and our relationship with the Commonwealth campus? That's the focus to this question.
One sec. No, Nick, you bring up a lot of points, and that was something that a lot of different student leaders have brought up themselves. That is why I sent out another version of that with the key initiatives. Let me just read from it. The role of the all-college cabinet will be to unite all the major student leaders in an external commission chaired by the UPUA president. This will be completely student-run, with UPUA serving to bring these organizations together so that it is never an issue of misuse of this cabinet. I congratulate you also on attending your first UPUA meeting this week, but you have to understand that my relationship with UPUA and CCSG has gone on throughout this year, and it'll be something that we continue doing next year, and it's the role of the UPUA president to kind of have that dialogue and kind of have respect for your fellow peers. I've had a chance this year to work with CCSG, GSA, and we've had probably one of the best relationships of any of those three presidents I can remember having. We were able to have some concrete successes, again, some spirited debate, but in the long run really challenged ourselves to do what's best for the student body. And I can say at the end of the day that the results are positive. So thank you.
Miller Smith.
I'd like to take this question back to the focus of what the students wanted to hear about, which is the relationship between UPUA and CCSG. I've been able to work on both sides, both from a UPUA sector and then also being able to talk to various SGA presidents, actually just this past weekend. As the University Relations Chair for the Penn State Line Ambassadors, this weekend I planned and organized a conference called the All Campus Conference, which brought together ambassadors in Blue and White Society from all of the Commonwealth campuses here to University Park. And coincidentally, a lot of them also happened to be SGA presidents at their campuses, which led to personal discussions during downtime about some of the issues they face. So this is the way I've already started to reach out to these people to find out what their issues are at the campuses, and that they're now able to put a face to a name that they've been reading about, because believe it or not, a lot of them had recognized what I wanted to do, commended me on my platform, and been able to say, I hear you're running for president, best of luck with that, what are you planning to do? Additionally, in UPUA, I've also had the opportunity to work with various CCSG leaders. Was able to talk to George Corey at the beginning of the year about the formation of a Pennsylvania State Association, which is still underway. I also worked very close with Kate Mattis, not only this year, but last year through my work with governmental affairs, in planning Rally in the Rotunda, and also making sure that both the University Park and CCSG are on the same page with those issues. I think it is important to recognize, though, that as president of the University Park Undergraduate Association, my focus needs to be on the University Park campus, and I need to recognize the CCSG president as the expert on the Commonwealth campuses and respect their knowledge in that capacity.
Well, just to tout that both Catherine and I have come from a Commonwealth campus. We've always worked with Commonwealth campuses, and we understand the needs and the wants of students at those various campuses. Furthermore, we also live in an interesting world that we're also University Park students, and we understand the needs and the wants of the University Park students. So in reality, we have reached out to all student bodies at every campus, and I think we have gained a great perspective in knowing what the students need.
Miller Smith.
Again, I'd like to just emphasize the work that Matt and I have already proven and the experience that we already have in working with the CCSG and the Commonwealth campuses on various issues that reach across the board to all campuses, including University Park. But at the same time, respect is a platform that Matt and I are running on, and it's extremely important that we aren't working for other student organization leaders in the sense that we're trying to take over what they do and be the domineering voice. We're working with them. We're respecting their knowledge in their specific area, and that is what is going to set us apart as the best candidates for UPUA president and vice president.
I can just speak to my experience this year, working with CCSG, working with GSA, and hopefully further along with this idea of bringing together the rest of student organizations and the all-college cabinet, the cabinet of equals. While you talk of the idea of bringing together, bringing a bus to the Rally Rotunda, it wasn't until the urging of the steering committee that you finally agreed to do that. This was something you openly talked about in the steering committee, not providing a bus to the Rally Rotunda, one of the signature events for CCSG. And that is something that in 3 years' time at this university, I've attended every year and continue to support the efforts of the Commonwealth.
Okay, next question. There's been talk of separating the Campus Life and Diversity Committee of the UPUA Assembly into two separate committees. The Miller-Smith ticket has a strong stance on keeping the Campus Life and Diversity Committee combined. Each ticket has in their platform that they want to reach out to diversity groups. How do you plan on working with diversity groups so that they are not just a separate entity but integral to the student and campus relations? Starting with Miller-Smith.
Thank you. Matt and I feel extremely strongly about keeping the Campus Life and Diversity Committee together, and this is because of a vote actually discharged by the Campus Life and Diversity Committee this year. They're the ones who worked on these issues, followed the bylaws and what they were charged to do with these issues, and the outcome of their year was them urging the steering committee and the assembly as a whole to keep these two committees together. Trusting them as the people who've worked most closely on diversity and campus life issues within UPUA, we need to follow their lead in what they're recommending for us to do. In terms of reaching out to bringing diversity issues into the UPUA and what we focus on there, it's extremely important that not only the Diversity and Student Life Committee are knowledgeable about diversity issues, but the entire Assembly and the entire Executive Board and anyone involved in UPUA also needs to be well versed on these issues if we expect UPUA to take a leading step in bringing awareness to the entire student body, mainly the undergraduates, about issues of diversity. Matt and I believe that we need to educate students to empower them on issues of campus climate and, most importantly, Penn State climate. And we can't do that effectively until every member of the UPUA Assembly takes a responsibility in educating them about these issues. This is what we're standing for, and this is what is leading our ideas on addressing diversity issues around the campus.
The idea of doing this would be to separate diversity into the campus life and student rights. The Diversity Committee this year was one of our highest achieving committees that I can remember, and I was really proud of the work that they did throughout the year, specifically the legislative quarter that came out of that, the diversity roundtables that they were able to do toward the end of the year. The idea of this is not to cut the legs out of diversity, but more to streamline the process to make a better diversity committee and yet also a better campus life and student rights committee. With the 5 to 6 members you have in both these committees, it's just a simple logistics. You need to look at what's most successful for the student body. And while they might have felt one way, it's really important to look at what is best for the overall organization, and again, what is best for the overall student body. As far as what I would do to foster diversity, I'm going to take it back once again to the idea of the all-college cabinet. I think it's naive of us 5 white people up here to talk about our idea of what diversity is. What we need to do is bring the diversity organizations to the table as a cabinet of equals so that they have an active say in what goes on, so that they can bring to us their concerns and hopefully we can advocate for them on their behalf. We need a full-functioning diversity committee, and it's been because of the fact that diversity has been tied down in campus life and student rights that they've not been able to be as effective as they possibly can. I couldn't believe the experience and the leaders that we had in that committee this year, and I feel like they have the opportunity to accomplish so much more if we allow them to do that. Thank you.
In a Borsig-Passaic administration, these committees would possibly have to be separated because of our outlook on diversity. We have a 3-tier program, or a 3-tier system for outreach and diversity. First, we want to reach out to student organizations that see diversity as a true issue at this campus and at this university. B, we want to create multiple forums where students can come participate into an honest, open discussion about their experiences with diversity and what they see around this campus. Lastly, we want to hold a diversity summit where we can come together as student leaders and as Penn State students so that we can create a comprehensive plan with goals within 3, 5, and 10 years. And that way, we are reaching out to the student populations and ensuring that every student here is receiving a wonderful education. Nothing allows a student more to have a great education other than diversity. And sadly, this university has a problem with getting enough diversity here, so we want to create and work with the Assembly and so that we have diversity here at this campus.
Before we move on to the discussion, I just want to actually discourage people from applauding after every single response. It takes away from the overall time of the debate and is a distraction to the candidates at the same time. So please hold off applause until the end of the end of the question round. Okay? Thank you. Starting the discussion round with Miller Smith.
Thank you. I want to highlight a little bit more about how we want to streamline communication between the UPUA and diversity groups. And there's various ways that Matt and I have outlined doing this. And we actually have had the opportunity, which we feel very fortunate to have had, to be able to go out and speak to a lot of the student leaders who lead diverse groups or underrepresented groups on campus. And even this past Friday, we were able to sit down and have an open discussion with these groups to allow them to criticize our platform and tell us what we were missing in the diversity portion and what was good and what we needed to expand on, because honestly we recognize that we aren't the experts on these issues and that we need to be educated by the people who work with these issues every day. A couple things to consider. The majority of undergraduate students don't really recognize that not every Penn State student has the same experience and not every Penn State student has a great Penn State experience. And in order to solve issues of Penn State campus climate, to say that everyone is having, on the level playing field, a good Penn State experience, we need to move it forward as a Penn State community issue. It's not something the UPUA alone can solve, but it is something we can take a leading step forward on to educate undergraduate students. One way we want to do this is through focus groups. We want to sit down and actually speak to the people who live these lives every day and ask them what their experiences are. And not only have the discussion, but then bring back the discussion to put it into a publication that would be distributed to all undergraduates so that we can be able to widespread the Penn State experience of various different student groups to the Penn State community as a whole. Another important thing we need to consider doing is bringing seats back onto the assembly that used to be there but were moved to the executive to represent these populations. We need to bring a multicultural seat back onto the assembly, a women's seat, an LGBTA seat, an international seat, a seat for adult learners. These are communities with specific interests that aren't being recognized in the UPUA assembly floor because they don't have a voice right now and they don't have voting privileges. And these are all things we need to consider bringing back on. And these are all things we've gotten positive feedback from when we've spoken to leaders of diverse communities.
I'm going to cut you off, and there another person would like to speak on this? Borsick?
It's typical for people who are running for office that during an election you reach out to the student body and you reach out to student organizations. What's important is that you continue that throughout your administration, throughout the time that you serve the student body. It's not just about reaching out when it's appropriate for you. What you need to do is reach out when everyone else needs you to. And that's what both Catherine and I have gone around speaking to organizations. That this isn't going to be a one-time thing, us reaching out. This is going to be a continuation throughout the year of us reaching out, of us having a conversation, of us having a dialogue, and solving these issues together.
And Kieran's.
No, Nick, and I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's the point we need to hit home. And during my presidency, I was able to bring together groups of all kinds. Specifically, we brought the NAACP to be involved in the Tuition Relief Act campaign that we were doing. We didn't just stop and say, let's just do this as UPUA, let's bridge the shoulders ourselves. Let's bring together a bunch of different student organizations for a cause. Going back to my experience as an undergraduate as well, I've attended a great deal of different events. I remember as a freshman, before I ran for president, when nobody knew my name, I did a minority empowerment panel and brought together a group of different leaders to talk about some of these issues, brought it out into the light. As a sophomore, I remember attending a great deal of events. I remember attending the Speak Out College Democrats about policy and politics and how that relates to LGBTA and democratic issues. I think my experience as a leader just kind of shows that I have really kind of fostered this idea of diversity, and really in the future with my idea of the all-college cabinet, hope to bring them together more to the table. So thank you.
Now for final responses, starting with Miller Smith.
I have always stayed on top of issues in terms of reaching out, and I couldn't agree with Mr. Borsick more. One thing Matt and I have stressed in our meetings with student organizations, not only through the campaign, but prior to when we even started this campaign, is the need for constant discussion and the constant bringing in of new people and new ideas to not only grow the UPUA, but grow the campus in general. I had the opportunity as University Relations Chair Line Ambassadors this year to host focus groups already, and I have experience in doing this. And the feedback I received from the members who sat in the focus groups was always positive. They were happy to have the opportunity to speak with us. They were happy to have the opportunity to share their ideas. And this is something I've proven to be a positive and successful experience that I now want to carry to the UPUA on a larger scale.
Yes. Next to Kieran Gupta, sorry.
30 seconds. I just want to go back to the idea of the central question was diversity and why we should separate that out as far as a committee. Again, we had some of the most experienced leaders and some of our up-and-coming leaders in this committee. They were really kind of focused on the diversity issues, and I felt like we could have accomplished a whole lot more, had a whole lot of more roundtables, which was the original idea, if we would have allowed them to do their specific task of looking at diversity. The issue is to also separate out the campus life and student rights, because they really are two separate things, and to kind of allow them to streamline the process. Again, as far as the overall looking at the diversity issue and giving them a place at the table, it's all about the all-college cabinet. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the assembly where we give people a voice. We can give them a much greater voice if they're involved or at the table in a cabinet of equals. So thank you.
Borsick Paseka.
Catherine and I have both enjoyed reaching out to student organizations and discussing with students the issue of diversity, and we need to continue doing that. And it's important for UPUA, every individual within UPUA, to do the same, and we hope that they would do that. Also, we see this as, if this wasn't such an issue, or if we had such great leadership currently, these wouldn't be true issues. Problem is, there needs to be a change. There needs to be new direction, there needs to be new leadership. And Catherine and I are bringing in a new environment, a new atmosphere, where we can all collaboratively work together for the betterment of the student body.
Thank you. Now, as we already heard tonight, the Kieran's Gupta ticket wants to reestablish the all-college cabinet last used at University Park in the 1950s, which unite all major student leaders, primarily organization presidents on campus. Is the all-college cabinet the best way to discuss issues with all the student leaders? Is there another way you would like to address the student leaders? We'll start with Kieran's Gupta.
Hillary and I both think that this offers the best opportunity to bring everyone to the table. As I said, when we brought out this idea, it was very specific, and there was a lot of fears that this is UPUA making everyone subordinates. As someone who is a student leader, I met with a lot of different others and said, what can we do to improve this? I took that feedback and offered up another solution. That is what you do as president. You have to be dynamic. You have to be able to change and meet other student organizations, and you have to be able to listen in a diplomatic way. By bringing everyone to the same table, it won't be UPUA heavy-handed putting down what they want and the rest of the student organizations reading about it in the newspaper. It'll be them involved in the discussion from the beginning, right when it hits the fan, right when the roots begin to seed. It's really important that these organizations have an active say in what goes on within UPUA, because as the student government of University Park, their voice is very important to us. And also, it's the idea of bringing together not just your typical governing organizations, but bringing together organizations of all kind that have major say on this campus. And while it may be specific to philanthropy, or it might be specific to a specific culture, we need to bring them all to the table, because when you bring a diverse group of ideas to the table, you can come out with the best results. And in the end, we'll have a much better student body. So thank you.
Borsig Paseka.
Thank you. The all-college cabinet in its nature is good, as long as all student organizations and governing councils are equal. But I think what Catherine and I have emphasized is that student leaders don't always have the right answer. We don't know everything. What's important is that we listen 90% of the time, speak the other 10%. So we need to reach out to everyone else in the organizations. As many of you know who have been involved in student organizations in your college career and even in your high school careers, that just because you are the president or executive director or what it may be, or within an organization, doesn't mean you always have the answer. It depends on the people around you that really make the organization. And you as a leader, what makes you a great leader is the capability of listening. So Catherine and I believe that we need to make sure that all voices are being heard. That's not just one individual from a student organization. That's not enough. It's good to get that acquaintance and to get those lines of communication starting. But we need to expand from this. It's too limited. We need to expand this idea of involving people in this discussion.
Miller Smith.
Matt and I have also spent a lot of time on the campaign trail reaching out to student leaders and speaking with them and bringing up the idea of an all-college cabinet, because it's not something that Matt and I agree with, and we wanted to reach out to student leaders that are called out to be a part of it and see how they felt about it. And actually what we found is we've earned the endorsement of a lot of student leaders who have been called upon to sit on this all-college cabinet, regardless of the fact that they've been called on it and that we don't support it. These leaders include the Rainbow Roundtable, Caleb McPherson, president of ARSH, Mike Hackey, past overall of Thon. These people are all coming out in support of Matt and I, with the understanding that we don't think the all-college cabinet is the best way to unite students. We don't think that we can just claim the right to unite all these people. We have to earn it. We can't tell them that they now must sit on this all-college cabinet and advise the UPUA if they either have no interest, as in some of the cases, organizations that we've talked to, including line ambassadors who are also endorsing us, or that we haven't reached out enough to make it worth their time. We need to earn the right to unite these students, and Matt and I believe that. We are not in a position to just claim it as our own.
We'll now move into the discussion section. We'll start with Kieran's Gupta.
Yeah, I can name drop too, but I don't think that gets us anywhere. After me, I actually met with two of the people you just mentioned. One of those was Kayla, one of those was Mike. Kayla actually offered up a great deal of suggestions to me. Much of those I took to heart because I have respect for her and the organization of ARSH. I made a lot of changes to it based upon her edits and based upon her thoughts, as well as that of me with other student organizations. As I said, part of being the president is not just standing by your idea 100%. You have to listen to other people. You have to gauge their feedback, and that's something that I've had an opportunity to do. I think if you gauge people now the idea of the all-college cabinet, I think they'd be much more open to it. The intention, as I said, is to bring major governance, advocacy, diversity, philanthropy, and a coalition as a representative of the student body. After being elected, it says right here, Kiran and Gupta will form a working group to best identify the organizations that are essential to be at the table. This isn't meant to be a heavy-handed idea by Gavin Kiran and Hillary Gupta, but it means to unite all of us under one central commission, the same way that they used to have CASL. But the problem with CASL, the Cabinet Student Leaders, was that it was made by the administration. This is a chance for students to empower themselves. And if you're not about students empowering themselves, then you have no business being UPUA president. Thank you.
Miller Smith.
We absolutely are for students empowering ourselves. Our entire vision for the UPUA moving forward is a vision of empowerment of the UPUA, and most importantly, empowerment of the undergraduate student population, regardless of what organizations they're involved with or aren't involved with. Funny thing that you should mention Kayla's suggestion. She shared her suggestions with me as well, and she told you that what she handed you back was X's through the entire idea, and that's what she shared with me. So I find it funny that you're saying she handed you all this constructive criticism when she told me that she slashed the whole idea with her criticism. So I would argue again that Matt and I are on the right track in terms of trying to find a good way to work with student leaders instead of one that's domineering in a way to take over.
Borsig Paseka.
I want to provide a little clarity, but thank you, Ms. Miller, because I also heard the same thing from ARSH, that they were not very supportive of this idea. And when I, with our one of our campaign managers, Mohammed Aruda, were the only two left, and while Gavin and the other UPUA officials left, she made it clear that they were not very happy with this current idea of an all-college cabinet. Now, the importance is we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need to empower students. We really need to target freshmen and sophomores. It's of the utmost importance because these are the ones that sometimes are timid to get involved, and they shouldn't be, because they have some of the brightest ideas, new ways of looking at things, and they should be embraced. So it's our job as UPUA to help these individuals along as their representatives. It's our duty, and we need to empower them because they are the future of Penn State.
We'll move into our 30-second wrap-ups. We'll start with Kiran Gupta.
Well, now that, I don't want to go this route, but since you want to name drop continually, I actually got a text message from Kayla. Much better on the all-college cabinet, exclamation point. Thank you for working to change that. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Borsig Paseka.
I would like to say, if you're texting during the debate, maybe you don't have your full heart in this. Undergraduate students of this campus, and if you have other things to take care of, then maybe you should be sitting on this panel, because this is serious business. We are here to get the work done of the student body, and I hope that everyone up here has that in mind.
Miller Smith.
Matt and I understand the need to reach out to other student organization and other student organization leaders to bring them into the decisions of UPUA. But this is more than just in an advisory role to the executive. These people need to be informing the decisions and the legislation that UPUA is drafting, writing, and passing, because ultimately what the UPUA is designed to do is be a body that represents all undergraduates. If we can get to them easier because they are involved in an organization, then perfect. What we care about is representing their interests, and that's what we're working for.
Okay, for the next question. The Borsig Paseka ticket wants to make a student-centered board to oversee the information technology fee like the student activity fee. The administration feels that this is not practical. Do you feel the administration is correct, or can the students really properly oversee this fee as well? Starting with Borsig Paseka.
this is an issue dear to my heart because the IT fee has been the fastest growing fee at this university, and there is no student oversight. This year, happily, that the Student Advisory Committee on Information Technology Services has student representatives on it to give insight to the administration and staff to what the IT fee should be spent on, and hearing the new initiatives coming out of IT. That's not enough. We should have the say. When asked, President Spanier answered to the question if we should have more student representation. President Spanier flat out said, no, students can't handle it. That's wrong. We can handle it. We're young adults, and we're the future, not just of Penn State, but of this world. And we need to be able to harness that power because we know what's needed for the student population. We know what's best for ourselves. Vice President David Sims said it perfectly. When he was in Indiana, he said that students had say over all fees, and administrators approached them to get funding. I think that's a dream that we need to be working towards. And the Borsig Passaic ticket will work towards that goal and make it a reality.
Now, Miller Smith.
I'm going to hand this question off to my partner and vice presidential candidate, Matt Smith, because of his extensive and innovative work on this project.
Sure, I want to thank the Borsig Passaic ticket for bringing this up for discussion. Overall, we've already worked quite extensively with CCSG this year to make a student-centered board for the IT fee. In fact, my Academic Affairs Committee just submitted a report to the members of the IT fee, the Student Advisory Committee at ITS, not more than a week ago. The overall purpose of creating an oversight for this fee is that it hasn't been fought over for a long time, and Samantha and I are always looking for a challenge. We absolutely believe that this IT fee can be brought under students' domain. I've been working for the past several months to incorporate small portions of it through the student councils of the university in order to take control of certain portions of the student IT fee. But when the Vice President of Student Affairs agrees that students should have oversight of one of the highest IT fees in the country, I can't be motivated to look at this kind of a challenge and think about how we can go about doing that. It's going to take work with the trustees, with the president of the university, and other student leaders who are sitting on that committee, and Samantha and I are absolutely committed to that vision.
Yeah, thanks. I think this is something we all agree on. There's a need to look at this is obviously a fee that grows every year. It's over $200 a semester. It's something that, we talk about the student activity fee, we talk about the facilities fee, this trumps them all. Here's an opportunity to kind of look at the overall structure of the fee. There was something that was just brought up, was the idea of meeting with administrators, meeting with the faculty, meeting with trustees. And this is something that I feel is one of my strongest suits. As current president, I've had the opportunity to meet with all these people. So when my Academic Affairs Committee of UPUA, which Matt chaired last year, brings up an issue such as the IT fee and how they want to have more oversight, this is a great opportunity for me with my direct relationships and my ability to basically meet with anybody that I need to, could actually make an impact on. While the others kind of talk of how they'll do things with the IT fee, I feel like this is something with my direct relationships that can kind of go beyond just the advisory board that currently exists at the next level. That being said, I feel like we've made a lot of headway with our Academic Affairs Committee this year, and I'm quite pleased with the work that they did, so thank you.
Okay, we're going to start the discussion with Borsig and Passaic, but I'm going to ask a slight question also at the same time. Since you want to have student involvement with the decision of the fee, I'd like to know what portions of the fee do you feel would be deserve the most oversight from the students?
I'm sorry, repeat the end of that?
What portions of the IT fee itself, like where the IT fee is currently going, do you feel that students could have better oversight from in deciding those portions?
Everything. I think if it's a fee paid by students, we should have oversight of it. I think in all instances, if it's for computer labs, if it's for the libraries, if it's for different services provided through IT, everything should be we should see oversight from it. I think the problem also is we fully don't know where it goes, and that's an issue. And some of us have been in positions to enact change and haven't. I brought this up as a huge issue last year, way back in the fall last year, when I was a sophomore, saying that this is an issue, that there's no oversight in the IT fee. Slowly, in my role at that time, I was able to work towards a goal for more student oversight, and this year I've worked slowly towards more. I want to be able to have the opportunity of having the position of your student body president so that I can enact change and really get oversight in every single instance of the fee, because that's the right of the student who is paying that fee.
Kiran Gupta.
I think the best model, and this is something that the Academic Affairs Committee actually brought to UPUA, the Assembly for, was the academic deans giving it to the specific councils to have control over their fee. I think that this is something in the future that we can work towards, and I think with a lot of the Academic Affairs Committee coming back next year, that we have the pieces in place and the experience to really move forward on this issue. So thank you.
Smith.
I think it's my responsibility to address this question as well in terms of how I would deal with this as UPUA president, since that's the office I'm running for, obviously. And I think that one thing to understand is that when you're in the role of UPUA president, it's also your responsibility to work with administrators. You are considered the voice of the student body, the undergraduate student body in terms of UPUA, and they are very willing to work with you. One thing I have found though is that in the role of UPUA president, that's not the only way to reach out to administrators, and they're willing to talk to students who aren't UPUA president as well. I've had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Spanier and Mr. Spins, as well as work directly with Dr. Burlingame on a Service Nation resolution for the UPUA, which is a national movement across the country. And I think that what's important to emphasize here is that I do have experience working with administrators, so it's not a huge leap in thought process to think that I would be able to work with administrators on this issue. We see student oversight on other boards. The Student Activity Fee Board, the Facilities Fee Board now has student oversight, so there's no reason to think that there's not a way to work out how we can make a student advisory committee stand over the ITS fee. I'm also going to hand off to Matt to talk about the specific uses of the ITS fee currently.
Sure, the main piece that we would have to look into oversight is not the university libraries. Obviously that's a very complex issue, but I appreciate President Kieran's bringing out that one of the major ways that students can take over it is the allocation to the individual colleges. Every academic college receives a portion of the IT fee relative to their student population. I think that first of all, since no one can tell any of us where that number has to come from, when you have the College of IT, or College of IST having a much lower enrollment than the College of Liberal Arts, records of the Board of Trustees to take on this task.
At this time, we're going to move into the 30-second responses, starting with Borsig Paseka.
The proposal that Mr. Kieran spoke of from the Academic Affairs, it's a good start, but it's not good enough. It obviously hasn't brought about change in the past year, and we're saying that as the Borsig Paseka's ticket, Nick has worked on this for the past 2 years, and he is not afraid to go out there and get what he has to do to get oversight that the students should have. We pay into this fee, like Nick said, like you all know, and we need oversight of it. We need complete oversight, and it needs to be direct, and it has to happen soon.
Miller Smith.
My vision is that students need to take control in some part, and hopefully a large part, of the ITS fee. We can't have fees that students are paying, that students A, don't know where they're going, and B, have no say to where they're going. It defeats the purpose of imposing a fee. It's not tuition and room and board, it's not books and supplies, it's essentially student taxes that students are supposed to go directly back to students in the form of services. And that's why student control over the ITS fee is so essential and something that Matt and I are very committed to making a reality.
Kiran Gupta.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had a lot of experience with fees as UPUA president. One of those was the facilities fee. Obviously, I stood opposed to it from the beginning and was able to see some results in that we didn't make it $50. We made it $50 instead of $100 semesters in the beginning. Also, once that was passed, though, I was charged with basically seeing what we could get as far as the facilities fee advisory board. The original model was to have 3 students and a team of administrators. As UPUA president and a lot of meetings with Vice President Sims you talked about, as well as other vice presidents of the university, I was able to set it up so I was chaired by myself and the GSA president, along with 5 other undergraduates and 1 other graduate students, where students clearly had the majority. So I think as we look to talk about fees, I clearly have the most experience and have student-centeredness in mind. Thank you.
The Miller-Smith ticket feels that UPUA is currently not student-centered and that many of UPUA's actions are still secretive and not focused on student interests. Do you feel this is an accurate assessment, and how do you plan to better address student concerns? And we'll start with Miller-Smith.
Well, to address the first part of the question, if I didn't think it wasn't an accurate assessment, I probably wouldn't have put it as such a large part of my platform. So yes, I do think that the secretive nature of UPUA and the student-centeredness part of UPUA is a huge problem that is not only something we face this year, but in the past. I don't see UPUA as having earned the trust of the students yet. It's only 3 years old. Most undergraduate students cannot name what UPUA is or what it does for them. The fact that they don't understand that they have a student government here to serve them is a very large problem, and there's various ways that we can address this. Transparency is key. UPUA needs to make known to its students what we're doing, what we're planning on doing, and most importantly, what legislation we're passing. Because as soon as the Assembly passes legislation, it's the official student opinion of the undergraduate voice. I've asked students in various meetings that I've attended and various individual students I've spoken with, can you name one thing UPUA has passed this year? Can you tell me something that we're saying is your voice? Raise your hand if you can name something. No one ever raises their hand. That's a huge problem. 50 people working in a room all the time, knowing what's going on, is not representative or transparent in terms of representing 38,000 people. And that's something Matt and I really see a desperate need to turn in a 180-degree direction in order for UPUA to be a successful student government.
Kiran Gupta.
I have to take personal issue with this. As the current president, I feel like I've geared UPUA in a much more transparent manner than it previously was. I got student involvement in facets that we never even had a step in, as far as with administrative circles, a lot of councils, a lot of committees. Every one of our meetings is open to the public. Every one of our meetings has minutes taken. Even our assembly meetings have videos taken of them. But yet, I still don't think that's enough, which is why I welcome the opportunity to go further. I find it troubling that both tickets mock the idea of an all-college cabinet, bringing together a team of equals at the same table talking about concrete issues that affect our daily lives. Here's an opportunity for us to go further. Here's an opportunity for us to maybe shake up what the common quota is, to move to a step where we have everyone at the table talking about major issues. This is something that I've tried to do for years, and now I'm finally at a place, and UPUA is finally at a place, to bring together these type of leaders. Yes, you dropped a couple names, but I could drop a couple other names that are right on board with this idea, and are pleased to see this happen. And I caution you as far as this idea of not so secretive as well, because I find it as a complete contradiction. Already today, you've talked about how you've worked with the CCSG on the Raleigh Rotunda. Yeah, you've talked about not even getting a bus to the Rotunda. Already you've talked about the PA State Association. Where is it? You've had a year. I lead an open student government. My track record you can find for the past 3 years. I've been in the newspaper for the past 3 years. You can see everything I do. I keep a blog, and I plan on doing video minutes next year. We teamed up with this all-college cabinet idea. We're going to be one transparent student organization. Thank you.
Borsig Fonseca.
As you can see here today, it's a testament to the fact that people do not know what UPUA is. If you ask somebody what the initials stand for, they can't tell you. They have no idea what it does. Like Sam said before, it's something that it's not transparent, it's not clear. What Gavin said is correct. He has said that they put the UPUA assembly meetings on the internet. It's filmed, people are ready to go. But it doesn't you can't just have a sign in the hub that says, come if you want to learn about legal affairs, come to our meeting tonight. You need to truly engage students. You need to truly have them, like we've spoken about, open forums, discussions. It doesn't stop at the UPUA assembly meetings. It goes on past that. It's meeting with freshman students in residence halls. It's meeting with different organizations throughout the year, not just when it's election time. UPUA, like I said, it's very secretive. Sam has said that. I feel like it's something that needs to be made more transparent, and Nick's going to speak a little bit more about it.
And what's important about getting the name of UPUA out is UPUA isn't an individual. is an organization. And that's important. And that there are collective individuals that need to work together to communicate the work of UPUA and reaching out to the student body. So we need to work together as one organization, not as one individual, in reaching out to not just student organizations, but the student body as a whole.
We'll start the discussion with Miller Smith.
Matt and I have laid out a very extensive plan on how to make UPUA more student-centered and less secretive, and I'd like to go through a couple of those plans with you all here tonight. There's very simple things that could have been done in the past and haven't been that Matt and I will be able to do as UPUA president and vice president. One thing, public office hours. Instead of expecting 38,000 students to come up to 314 Hub, which is frosted and encased and not the most welcoming place, why not bring the executives and the representatives down into and amongst the students where they're going about their day to speak with them there, to have them introduce themselves and say, "Hi, my name's Samantha Miller, I'm the UPUA president, and I'm here to serve you. What do you need?" These are questions that aren't asked that need to be asked. In addition, we need to have a more formal set of data that we're using to inform our decisions made both as executives and as assembly members. This can be done by holding a biannual referendum, once in the fall, once in the spring, to gauge student opinion in a large-scale way, but can also be done in more small-scale ways during these public office hours. Telling representatives during your office hours this week, ask 50 students about this upcoming legislation that we'll be voting on and see how they feel about it. We don't have any hard data from student opinion informing our decisions right now, and that's causing a very large gap in communication between the UPUA and between the students, and that's why they really have no idea what we're doing up in 302 Hub every Wednesday night currently.
Kieran Gupta.
Well, let me start off by, you mentioned yourself as the president, not so fast. I really feel like we have some of the things you brought up, public office hours. This has been tried. We're pissed about this campaign. The only people that should have been pissed is the student body because that netted no results. Just because you put on a UPUA t-shirt doesn't mean people are going to come up to you. And again, you mocked my idea of the all-college cabinet saying it shouldn't be brought together. Why bring presidents together? Here's an opportunity to bring together all of these presidents, to have all these organizations represented so they can go back to their constituencies. Bring together all these constituencies who maybe they didn't know what the letters was, but I can guarantee you by the end of next year they'll know exactly what UPUA is, what they stand for, and what they accomplished. This year it's kind of disheartening. We accomplished free legal services, 10 landlord mediation, online book exchange, and we're going next year with a $140,000 budget, all of which I was responsible for securing. Yeah, you're right, the common student doesn't necessarily know about it. So going into next year, it's really important that this idea of the all-college cabinet is brought to the table, and I would appreciate not being mocked for the idea of trying to bring presidents together in a sign of unity.
Borsig Paseka.
I just have one thing to say about the legal affairs, and it goes on along with this, about the transparency. I'd like to know how many people were a little bit shocked when they opened the newspaper today and realized that their SAF fee was going to be increased by $2. You say that you went out and you surveyed all these students about if that's what they wanted, but was it really what they wanted? Is it the $2 increase? Yeah, it's $2, but for students that need help paying for school, the $2 makes a difference. $2 every year, $2 every year semester, $4 every year, it adds up. So talk about transparency, but who did you survey? Who did you ask? Students, I don't think knew about it. I knew there were certainly a lot of people shocked when they opened the newspaper this morning.
And going off Catherine's point, I know being at the board meetings and sitting on many of them, I remember both George, Corey, and myself and other representatives said, where is the data? We want to see the data that you went out and searched for the student voice. We still, to this day, are still waiting for that data, and because it hasn't shown up. And we talk about, UPUA getting better on lines of communication, but what has UPUA enacted this year to change the environment? Frosting on your windows? I think that more so keeps people out of the UPUA office. Has it been, surveys for the student body? That hasn't been done because we still haven't seen the data from it. So we're asking, where is the data? Where is the outreach to the student body?
We'll now move into 30-second wrap-ups. We'll start with Miller Smith.
We've laid out a plan for not so secret student government for a reason. We've laid it out because we are concerned for the undergraduate students. Matt and I have sat in assembly, myself for 1.5 years now, Matt for 1 year. I've seen 2 presidents lead, and neither of them have been able to tackle this issue adequately. It's time for a change. It's time to see someone who's actually making this a priority in their platform instead of assuming it's going to happen through the Collegian. The Collegian isn't the UPUA newsletter, it's an independent news source. It's a time for the UPUA to take responsibility for communicating directly with students.
Kiran Gupta.
Well, I don't think we've seen a plan for the not-so-secretive government. What I think we've seen is an opportunity by you to try and discredit the successes of my year. What we've seen a plan is the all-college cabinet. The idea, again, of bringing together all these student leaders, a cabinet of equals coming together, and the idea of sharing our collective wisdom and sharing our experiences and sharing the initiatives and issues that we all have. You talk about not-so-secretive, but by wearing UPUA t-shirts, is that really going to stop the secretive? Or what will happen, though, is by bringing together all these different presidents under one coalition working together for student body. Thanks.
Borsig Fonseca.
There's something just said that's important. This is not an individual successes. These are UPUA successes. That's what's important to understand. When we start sectionalizing and seeing ourselves as individuals, but not as instead of a collective group representing the student body, this is how we're ineffective, and this is how we're secretive. If we work together as representatives for UPUA, as representatives of the student body, we will, by the nature of it, become more transparent and more open to communicate with the student body.
Okay, next question. And I was not going to go to this one yet, but since it was brought up during the discussion. Each campaign has a different stance on student fees. It was announced Friday afternoon that the student activity fee would increase $2 next year. In order to try to reduce the increase of other fees to students, how do you suggest the university cut or stabilize costs? Starting with, let's go with Borsig Fonseca.
I know it's right beside me. This is the pinnacle of our candidacy. That we understand by speaking with students the current economic times they are in. Certain individuals supported an increase in the student activity fee. While nominally it was not too large, it's a symbol. It's a symbol that certain individuals on UPUA are out of touch. They don't understand what is going on with the student body. Both Catherine and I want to make sure that fees are frozen, that tuition is also frozen. Now, that's going to be quite difficult. I don't believe so. First, we believe that the academic integrity of this university should remain intact. We don't believe in cutting any faculty members, but we do believe in cutting many staff areas within the university. To walk into an office and see 4 staffers or staff assistants for an administrator or within an office is crazy. We need to consolidate so we are more effective and more efficient. And that way we can cut costs. Thirdly, we need to work also with the university in trying to cut down divisions budgets. There's a lot of irresponsible spending done at this university. Not enough has been done. And for us as students to say, oh, we don't want a tuition increase, but then in ourselves increase a tax on ourselves is irresponsible.
Miller Smith.
The UPUA can't directly dictate to the university where they absolutely have to cut costs. If we take that approach, we're never going to see any success. What we can do is work with them in dissecting where the university does spend money and making suggestions with the undergraduate students in mind about where costs can be cut. Where we might gain more leverage in being able to have more of a say over where costs get cut is when we start to demonstrate student responsibility and when we start to encourage student responsibility among the undergraduate population here at Penn State. One of the visions that Matt and I have for this is to work with the administration to find out where student expenses are at an excess, where we're wasting money, whether it be in the residence halls, because electricity costs are through the roof because lights are being left on and conservation of energy isn't being practiced, or whether it be in dining halls with taking wasteful amounts of food and things like that. There are ways to demonstrate student responsibility, and when we grow that in the student body, we can then translate that to say, we've taken responsibility, now we need to see someone else do their part to cut student costs. This doesn't take away the need to make sure the undergraduate voice is involved in decisions about hiking costs and hiking fees and things like that. Obviously, this is extremely important, and it will be Matt and myself's responsibility to be that undergraduate voice in these decisions. But we can't go in there with a mindset that we're going to dictate to people what has to be done. Again, we have to work with them. We can't assume anything for them.
Kieran Gupta.
Well, I just want to talk about a few things. One is the campaign that I've kind of led with a lot of different student leaders from NAACP, IFC, CCSG, and a plethora of other students who've gotten involved with this Pennsylvania Tuition Coalition that focuses on Tuition Relief Act. It started with a rally / press conference on the steps of Old Main, of which we invited a lot of student leaders. We had about 100 in attendance, which is a pretty good sign. We didn't stop there. Then we headed down to Temple. We held a rally with their student government and a show of solidarity. We didn't stop there either. We also got a chance to meet with the governor. Didn't stop there either. I've met with about 6 to 7 state legislators from the Appropriations and Education Committee to talk about these issues. The same legislators are proposing these. But let me get back a little bit to the fees. The Student Activity Fee Board, yes, it went up $2. That is the lowest increase in about 10 or 15 years. And that's something that I was able to accomplish as president of UPUA. Keep costs extremely low while adding a new and innovative program in the form of legal services. You spoke of the facilities fee. You were one of the biggest proponents for the facilities fee last year, a $100 fee that would tax the student body. If it wasn't for my efforts, we wouldn't have had it at $50 at University Park. Yet you wanted $100. To me, that's mind-boggling, the contradictions of the two. Again, lastly, just to sum it up, my experience with the trustees, having been having a seat at the Board of the Trustees meeting this year, at first, they really kind of see you as a rotating seat. Over time, though, and over the meetings, they kind of start to have respect for you. And now I'm actually at a point where I have direct relationships with many of the trustees. So when you speak of tuition, none of you have that relationship. And in 1 year, none of you will be able to gain that. And that is the most important thing as far as coming back, is the effect on tuition and fees. Thank you.
Okay, starting the discussion with Borsika Paseka.
Having a relationship is only good if you can bring results out of it. And sadly, we haven't seen results this year. And just for clarification, I didn't want a $100 fee for the university. That's why I advocated for a $0 level for the facilities fee, so campuses can decide that they want no fee at their campus. So I was the one who was the strongest advocate on that. We lived in a realistic world that the administration was moving forward with this, with or without the student voice, and that was a shame. But I made sure that we had the voice of saying that we wanted a $0 option and that students had control over the fee. And I want to show that Catherine and I want to work with the administration in giving alternatives. So it's not always, let's increase tuition, instead, let's maybe look at cuts. So sometimes it's a different perspective, a different way of looking at things. And one of those ways was just recently at a dinner with Housing and Food Services. I was speaking with Mr. Connell Carr, who's the Director of Housing Operations. And because of a suggestion, they're now getting a dual flush system, dual flush toilets in newly renovated Beam Hall. In this way, we can save money by less water usage. And if this proves successful, which it has at other campuses, we hope to install those toilets at other residential halls. So it's one way to speak about rallies and things like that, but it's actually about action, about meeting with state reps, meeting with state senators, which I have had on numerous occasions. I have been in Harrisburg and meeting with these individuals, saying, I am a student, this is the student, this is the face, a face of a student, this is the student voice, we need to see change.
Smith.
It only takes a year to build relationships with administrators if you're not dedicated to that cause. There's no reason why, if Matt and I are elected on April 1st, we don't start building those relationships on April 2nd as UPUA president and vice president. It's about attacking the job and being ready from day one, and that's something that Matt and I are absolutely prepared to do. I'd also like to note that we're not starting from ground zero in terms of building these relationships with administrators. Matt and I have worked with numerous different administrators. Matt has a very good relationship with all of the deans in the academic schools. I have a good relationship with many of the administrators in Old Main and in the hub and in various areas. We're ready to do this. We're ready to take the lead on these projects and make sure that we're in there. Administrators are used to having a constantly changing student body. Undergraduates are typically here 4 to 5 years. There's a lot of turnover. You can't expect to see a UPUA president in office for 4 years like you would the United States president. That's not how this population works. It is turnover, but what doesn't turn over is the fact that the UPUA is the official voice of the student government, of the undergraduate student body, and that the UPUA president will act as the student representative to these administrators. That's a role that Matt and I are ready to take from day one, April 2nd.
Kieran Gupta.
I heard two common themes: action and the idea of a high turnover. Yes, that is what the administration expects, the idea of a high turnover rate. But by bringing me back for an extra year, along with the 22 candidates who mutually endorsed me, most of those who are returning UPUA members, we have a chance of continuity. We have a chance to continue on the goals of this year. We have a chance to lay down a foundation of respect for the University Park Undergraduate Association. And I can help lead that, and I have this year. You say it will only take you a day. It's naive. I wish that wasn't the case. It takes a while. You have new responsibilities, the Board of Trustees, Alumni Association, all these new boards that you never sat on. And it's just something new. You have to be able to deal with it. As somebody who's already gone through that, as somebody who already has concrete initiatives moving forward, as someone whose most of his platform is already on rolling because I decided to get moving on this, knowing the time it takes to complete initiatives, there's no doubt that I'm the most qualified, and with this idea of continuity can come back. Lastly, just want to hit on the idea of action and meeting with state legislators. That is something that I just went over saying. I met with a plethora of different state legislators, spoke at the Rally Rotunda, spoke at Temple, spoke at Penn State, met with the governor. So here are some major opportunities, and I think that we can build upon this action and the longevity that I provide by being president once again. Thanks.
At this point, 30-second responses starting with Boris Fonseca.
What we've seen in the past is there's been a lot of speaking, but no action. What you have to measure with experience is, if you're going to tout experience, you better darn have the results. And the problem is, there haven't been results. So that is what Catherine and I want to bring about. Less talking, more action, more results for the student body so we can represent them and make sure that they have what they need for a successful career here at Penn State.
Miller Smith.
Just to clarify what I said about meeting with administrators on April 2nd, I'm not naive in pretending to think that I'm going to be best friends with Mr. Sims on April 2nd. What I am confident about is the fact that I will be able to go in there and begin working on a fantastic working relationship between himself and I and all the other administrators from day one. We're not going to wait till 3 months in to work on that. In fact, we actually have already started working on that. In terms of actions, Matt and I have proven results in what we've done on UPUA this year.
Kieran Gupta.
I'll try and get back to the overall question as well, but proven results, free legal services that we were able to create as far as, it took a year-long battle, a year-long struggle, able to get that going. A tenant landlord mediation program, able to get that going. An online book exchange, of which I sat on the Academic Affairs Committee when that was first conceptualized, and was able to see that through as UPUA president. And as well as a $140,000 budget that, for the first time in student government history at Penn State, will have a standing budget. The previous record was UPUA with $32,000 2 years ago. Those numbers really show the ability that we have as far as coming back to last year. Lastly, just to hit on the question, through my efforts as far as meeting with legislators, my continual speeches, I actually think that we'll have some concrete results as far as tuition relief and not just talk.
We'll have two more questions. The first one, a student submitted a question on our website about how UPUA's website has not been maintained this school year, citing that it still lists Hillary Lewis as president. If elected, how do you plan on making sure that the website is updated and that UPUA makes better use of technology to reach students? We'll start with Mr. Kieran's.
Yeah, that's really not funny. That's something that the problem was going into this academic year, we didn't have any budget. And this really goes back to the struggles that we had at the beginning of my presidency. The budget that we were given was from UPAC, and that was for operational, for a copier and a staff assistant is where about 75% of that went. I spent the whole entire first semester advocating just to get some money with my committee members of the Assembly and the Executive wanting to accomplish goals. Finally, I was able to get $38,000 budget for this year, something that's been very put to use by our committees and our respective divisions of UPUA. As far as the website question, that's something we're definitely going to allocate for going into next year. It was something that our Vice President this year and has been working with another member of the Assembly to have up and running once this campaign's finished. And that's really not a positive reflection of what we can do. I realize that the online forum is very important, which is why I plan on going back to my Saturday Night Times blog, which I was given, and using that on a more regular basis. Plan on doing weekly addresses, little fireside chats, I like to think of them as, right before each General Assembly meeting on Wednesday to kind of go over that week that was had, as well as post all the video minutes online through our website and give daily updates through those means. I think we've shown that the internet technology can be very useful for student government, and that's something with the funds that we have we'll be able to use. Thanks.
Borsig Paseka.
Well, just to say that you don't have the funds for something doesn't mean you can have it happen. The Council of Commonwealth Student Governments has an IT director that works for no money from CCSG, because CCSG has quite a small budget, and still we have an up and running website. Actually created a brand new website this year, and so for students to see and for the different staff members on CCSG to utilize for their benefit. So just because you don't have the money for something doesn't mean it can't happen. And furthermore, if technology is so useful, my question is, why hasn't it been utilized more this year? I mean, again, it's talk about what we want to do next year and not enough results. And what Catherine and I want to is show that UPUA and many of the good individuals on UPUA currently, that together we can have a lot of good results that's going to affect the student body.
Miller Smith.
I was able to sit on the second assembly of UPUA, which is the one that sat under the Hillary Lewis, Frank Keller administration. And at the end of that second assembly, we authorized money to be released to a webmaster to set up the UPU website for the next year. The money was allocated and the website was never completed. And actually, there was another piece of legislation introduced by the executives this year to give more money to that person to fill the job of webmaster when the staff assistant position became open, and hopefully use the salary of the old staff assistant to fund the webmaster. And it was actually shot down in the Internal Development Committee because there was a fear that the job was going to go to the same person. He was brought up to be appointed webmaster and the job wouldn't get done again. I have to say that the fact that the website is not updated is a failure of the executive board this year. IT is not the job of the assembly, which is where Matt and I were, and while in steering various times we did ask for the website to be updated, and not only Matt and I, various other chairs in the steering committee, it was something that was never acted upon. And it's something that absolutely has to be done if UPUA is going to even be viewed as legitimate by the student body, because they need to be able to go to a working URL and find that the current president this year was Gavin, not a girl named Hillary Lewis. So it was a huge problem that needs to be addressed.
We'll start the discussion with Kiran Gupta.
What you just said as far as the internal development is actually wrong. It was passed through the Internal Development Committee. It was set to be brought, that person was set to be brought to the Assembly. It was after discussions with my current Vice President about the best use of those funds and whether a rep presence was actually necessary, especially with the little bit of time left and the cost that it would come directly from the student activity fee, which is what the student activity fee, which is what that staff assistant position was paid for. We went back and forth a little bit and really determined that it was best that she take over the role of this and kind of try and focus on this, and that we not use any further student activity fee dollars on that. But the Internal Development Committee did pass this through, but we really kind of had conversations and went over it between each other and felt that this was not in the best interest of the student body and not in the best interest of student activity fee funds, which has really been a focus of what I've done during my presidency to make sure that funds are not misused and, you know, try to be as fiscally conservative as possible. Thanks.
Borsig Paseka.
When Harry S. Truman was President of the United States, on his desk he had someone said, "The buck stops here," meaning that anything good or bad that occurs on his watch is his responsibility and his fault. I would just appreciate, as a student of University Park, say, we overlooked it, we messed up, we didn't see it. because it's not about paying someone to do it. As I had said before, the Council of Commonwealth Student Governments has an IT director that has worked tirelessly to keep our website up and running, to keep it updated, as well in working collaboration with our Chief of Staff. People don't always have to do something for money. Sometimes people do it just out of selflessness. It's for the greater good. And that's what we should be focusing on. Not always, let's pay someone to do this, or let's throw a dinner for that. It's about responsibility and selflessness, because that's true student leadership.
Miller Smith.
So we don't have a website this year for UPUA. Well, this year for UPUA will be over on election day, April 1st, and we need to look towards the future. And Matt and I have a very simple plan to make sure that this problem is not one for the future. UPUA now has a close to $140,000 budget. What do? Make sure that part of that budget is allocated to a webmaster who will sit on the executive board, and their sole duty will to make sure that the UPUA has a functioning and updated website in order to increase communication with the student body. It's very simple.
Terrence.
Yeah, we do have a $140,000 budget, which, as I said earlier, I was responsible for securing. And that is something that was part of our show calls budget, which I was responsible for creating. The buck does stop here, Mr. Borsuk, but there's also a need not to misuse allocation of funds. When you realize that there's a month or two left and that there's only so much funds allocated to you, you need to be really conservative as far as student activity fee, especially when you're going to the board and asking for a concrete budget looking forward. So what we really wanted to do is be as conservative as possible this year and be as conservative as possible in the future, because while there might be a lot of worthwhile initiatives that we want to do, there's always the need to look to what you need to spend money on. But as far as the question of a web presence, I really kind of find it silly, and you've talked about this as a kind of reflection of my administration. Again, let me go back to my successes. Legal services accomplished this year, online book exchange, a continuation of my term as an academic affairs member, tenant landlord mediation program, as well as this long-term funding. I'd say that win or lose, I've set it up for the next UPUA president, hopefully me, to have a really successful term. Thanks.
Is that the end of the discussion, John? I will move into 30-second wrap-ups. Mr. Cairns.
Yeah, I should have saved it for that. Just to go over it, a website is a key means to get out students. I've talked about now going back to using the CDT blog, also doing the weekly updates before the UPUA meeting. While I wish everyone was selfless and worked for free, I'm a realist and also don't want to see that the University Parks Undergraduate Association website is not left up in the future. So I think it's important to have a continuity as far as a web team ready there. So I've talked about my successes a great deal previously, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Borsuk Paseka.
Well, Mr. President, all I have to say is it's time to stop talking about being president and actually being president. It's about having the buck stop with you. It's about stating that, you know what, we oversaw something and we made mistakes. We're humans. We're not perfect. We're student leaders, and students understand that. So the buck stops with the president, and decisions made are reflective of the president. We just need to ensure that when there are mistakes, that we see them and we try to make them right as much as possible. That's responsible leadership.
Miller Smith.
The president has the responsibility to give to the future as well as serving the undergraduate population while they're in their term. And a website is something essential to leave for the future of UPUA so that it's considered a legitimate organization. When people type in www.upua.org and find an outdated, extremely old website that has no information on it, it can only hurt any trust that you've built with them. And it's extremely important that in order to make a more transparent body and a more student-centered body, that we have a website that's up and functioning at all times.
Okay, now for our final question of the night. All of you mentioned engaging the first-year students as an important part of your platforms. How do you feel about the current engagement? How do you plan to properly approach the first-year students, starting with Miller Smith?
Matt and I feel very strongly that It's extremely important to every single undergraduate's career here at Penn State for them to be plugged into the university in one way or another. They need to find their niche, they need to find their passion, and be connected to it as early as possible so that they can maximize the benefits and opportunities of doing that over the entire course of their stay here as an undergraduate at Penn State. Matt and I want to look into the FitCat programs and the student engagement programs to bring student leaders into the first year students' atmosphere when they're being oriented so that they can reach out, not just the UPUA, but various student leaders across the board, so that we can get to freshmen and say, here's what we can do for you, here's how you join us, here's what we do. There can't be an information gap, and we can't rely on a student activity fair once a semester. That's kind of hit or miss. If freshmen can make it, great. If not, they miss out for another 4 or 5 months until there's another one. In addition to that, we have a plan that we've vetted with a lot of different freshmen from this year to ask if it would have been helpful. We went out to East and spoke with them, and that's the republication of a student handbook. This would include information about Penn State history and traditions, resources and services that are available to students their whole time here at Penn State as undergrads, and also, most importantly, a student organization directory that would have names of student organizations, a brief summary of what they do, and most importantly, a contact point so that students can get involved even from before they start here at Penn State with organizations that they're interested in. This is something freshmen have said over and over that they wish they had. It would have been so helpful to them, and it's something that Matt and I intend to make happen for the next set of freshmen.
Borsig Paseka.
This is something that, being a member of the first year engagement review plan committee, that I've already been discussing for the past year with various faculty members and staff members. As many of you may know, they switched the plan over. Senate passed a new plan, and it was distributed to the campuses and the colleges, and they were given an opportunity to fit all the criteria and to give a plan back to the committee that we would review, and then give them back our feedback, and they would change it for the fall of 2009. It's something that has been, it will be implemented, I can't say that word. It'll be active in fall 2009. It's already something that's been discussed. As far as engagement goes, I currently am the only student starting in 2 Mondays from now who is on the new student planning committee. I have Andrea Dowhauer, who's the assistant vice president for student affairs, has asked me to be on that committee because I had a lot of ideas about overnight first year student, like I would kind of be FitCat, but it would be an overnight event. It would happen sometime in May, June, July, before your freshman year. Student activities would, I'm gonna end and wrap up and I'll talk again, sorry.
Next, Melissa. Kieran's.
I think this is a great question. I think one of the major strengths of my platform. One of the things that is in there is the idea of speaking to every freshman. When I originally put that out, I got the idea of, well, that's ambitious or that's interesting. But I wanted to make it more than just an interesting or ambitious promise. So what I did was I met with the Vice President for Student Affairs, stressed to him that the importance of being with every student. This is something that he said he would lend a hand and be very supportive of so that I could get around the red tape. Also, I followed that up with meeting with Diane Andrews, the Director of Residence Life, as well as the Coordinator of First Year Students. The plan that we've made up is to meet with every residence hall, to go in their residence hall. In East, there's 14. Overall, I think there's about 17 to 18. The goal is to accomplish this in the first half of the first semester when students are still getting their feet wet. Give them experience the history of Penn State and the idea of getting involved along with that. Also, one of the strong suits I feel is with this is the idea of having a freshman-wide election. The same way we have the student body president, we have 2 freshman reps. One of those, 2 freshman reps. And I think it's really important that we make a big deal of the UPUA freshman seats because they need to understand what UPUA is from the beginning. Many times they don't find out until the spring. We'll follow this up with a Freshman Foundation Festival, which our programming committee will take on, setting up right in East Halls. We'll follow this up with outside of the involvement fair, doing an involvement fair right in East Hall so that the freshmen are engaged from the beginning. And not to mention, lastly, having FitCap move to an overnight model, such as many other universities have, to really get some more concrete initiatives involved in there, as well as hit up on some of the ideas of sexual assault and rape that have been left out in the real life choices section. Also, on a different spectrum, hitting up the ideas of the diversity in the campus climate of the university. So thank you.
Starting the discussion with Miller Smith.
I'm going to pass this off to my vice presidential candidate, Matt Smith, because he and I did work very extensively together on developing our plans for first year engagement.
Sure, obviously Samantha and I feel very positively about the undergraduate students that we have yet to meet here at University Park, and also that includes the change of assignment students. To that end, I'm quite surprised that the Borsig Passaic ticket would take areas that they have sat around the university and tried to create some division over how best to serve first year students. I've actually not sat on one of those boards myself, not because I wasn't invited, but because I've tried to create opportunities for up and coming student leaders here at University Park. One of those is my vice chair on academic affairs, Mike Wallace. Furthermore, I've worked extensively to prepare freshman members of the assembly, Ruth Kanagaraja and Colleen Smith, by helping them apply to the Presidential Leadership Academy. The opportunities for freshmen and change of assignment students have always been at the forefront of my partnership with Samantha Miller, and that's why I'm so passionate about it right now. But we want to make sure that we help them out by calling for an extension of the involvement fair, and also we need to make sure that we leave a lasting legacy through the handbook, and also including change of assignment students in the President's Convocation. Either way, there's no wrong way to help freshmen as long as you make sure that the President and Vice President are always thinking about setting up opportunities and working for the best interests of freshmen and change of assignment students for now and for years to come.
Getting back to the question is, how are we going to get freshmen back involved, or get them, period, involved in UPUA? And the problem is, freshmen, besides two positions, really can't get involved on UPUA unless it's through the executive branch, and that's a problem. Formerly, I've seen other student governments from around the Commonwealth campuses, and they actively have freshman representation, and real freshman representation. So what's important is that we need to go back and speak with the Assembly, and how are we going to go about getting freshman representation in the Assembly. Because what's going to happen if we get freshman representatives is that they can run for office, they're going to campaign in East Halls, they're going to campaign in Pollock, they're going to campaign in South, and what's going to happen? The name's going to get out there. So when the name gets out there, students are going to know at least what UPUA stands for. And when they see it in the newspaper, or they hear it anywhere else, they're going to say, oh, and they're going to understand and look more into the situation, and more what UPUA is working on. So it's important for us to target freshmen, and not just that they're inexperienced, that they shouldn't be on UPUA because they don't fully understand the issues of Penn State. But that's what's great, because they can bring a different perspective to UPUA that some of us have been in for the past 2 or 3 years. And in that, we can better represent the student body because of that fresh energy, fresh perspectives, and get them into the system so they can gain the experience necessary, so by the time they're juniors and senior years, they can really advocate for the student population. That's the best way to engage the freshmen.
Aaron Gupta.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this whole board is concerned with the freshman class, and I think that's really important. I think what differentiates Hillary and I is that we've laid out a plan. One of the things Nick spoke about was the idea of what happens after they don't win this freshman election. Well, that goes back to the idea of having committee interns. You see this model in a lot of other Big Ten student governments where they bring on interns to follow around assemblymen or assemblywomen or men for this semester. The idea of doing this is so that they stay involved with the whole UPUA process, and that when it comes time again for another election every spring, that they then move up into those roles. Just going back to some other things that I talked about, speaking to every freshman. Obviously, an ambitious goal, but we've already figured out the logistics of doing that. Freshman rep elections. There'll be a major event that'll kind of encompass the whole East Halls Avenue is what we're hoping to do. Along with that is to really kind of get out the vote and really put the importance on this is the idea of the freshman festival. And then if the UPUA is not their thing and they've gone to the involvement fair and haven't seen those results, a freshman involvement fair in East Halls. While other people are talking about ideas of how successful, we're laying out a concrete plan that we hope to benefit all of the freshmen and get them involved in UPUA from the beginning. So, thank you.
Okay, this time we'll move into the 30-second responses, starting with Miller Smith.
You can involve freshmen in UPUA without granting them, one of 2 seats that sit on the assembly for a freshman. Obviously, it's impossible to serve all freshmen in that capacity. What's most important is making them aware of UPUA and making them understand that UPUA is their official student government and all the services and resources that they can receive through UPUA if they utilize it properly. An intern program is a great idea, and there's an extensive one at Ohio State, but it won't work until freshmen understand what UPUA is, what its purpose is, and how it can serve students.
Borsig Paseka.
We need to engage and empower freshmen when they enter Penn State. Interns is not the way. It's subjugating them. Again, it's making subordinates, which seems to be a recurring theme in your platform. What's important is that we empower them. We allow them to run for offices, that we increase the numbers for freshmen to hold positions. In that way, they're going to want to get involved, they're going to want to advocate for their student body, they're going to want to know what UPUA is.
Kiran Gupta.
The whole idea is not to bring in subordinates. The whole idea is that freshmen usually don't understand the process. And it's to get them involved from the beginning. And if they can't win these freshman election seats, then there's this opportunity for interns. As president this year, I opened up the door to a lot of freshmen through my executive cabinet. But really, that's not the idea, is to have freshmen in all the director roles. The idea is to have more experienced leaders across campus. So next year, while I'll supplement my executive board with freshman seats, with freshman members serving on committees, it's really important to give freshmen as many avenues as possible, which Hillary and I clearly outline in our platform. So thank you.
That concludes the question and answer part of the debate. We will now have 60-second final statements by each of the candidates. We'll start with the Borsig Paseka ticket.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out. And thank you guys for getting involved into the campaigns, whichever campaign that you're on. That's great for you to do that. But Catherine and I have worked on a message. And the message is, we need to see results out of UPUA. We need to create a dialogue with the student body and student organizations. We need things to change. We as outsiders see this and have gained that perspective. And we know what needs to be done, what needs to be done away with, and what needs to be enhanced. Because of that, we can best represent every student here at Penn State. So, we would both urge you all, go out, tell your friends, and tell your enemies, tell everyone. Tell them to go vote. Vote April 1st. That's the most important responsibility they have for their student voice, is to go vote. And vote for the Borsig Paseka ticket so that we can see true change in UPUA, change that equals results.
Kiran Gupta.
I think what we see is the biggest strength of Hillary and I's campaign is the amount of success that we've had throughout this year. Hillary served as a 2-time program chair and a founding member of UPUA, and obviously my role being president. Here you have some of the shapers of this organization together in one ticket. Let me just go over, as we close, some of the major accomplishments of my first year in office. Legal services just finished last Friday. Online book exchange, something that I started as a member of the academic, was a part of planning for the Academic Affairs Committee and saw come to fruition. The tenant landlord mediation program, something that we campaigned on. We're able to work with the borough and see that happen as well. Continuing the transparency of this year, the idea of the all-college cabinet. No, it's not a joke to bring presidents to the table in a cabinet of equals. It's something that's paramount to the success and foundation of UPUA moving forward. Just to close, I ask that you all vote for Hillary and I on Election Day. We clearly represent the best ticket and the most experienced choice. Thank you.
Miller Smith.
I'd like to first thank the candidates for a great debate, and I wish them a smooth election day on April 1st. I'd like to close by stressing that Matt and I present experience not only within UPUA, but outside of UPUA too. Our only experience in working with this university doesn't come from our roles in UPUA, though we did take leading roles as assembly officers this year. We've both reached out to students outside the UPUA who are involved in different assets of the university that have interesting perspectives to bring to the table, especially when they don't know what UPUA is all about. And we understand how to cater to both those people and also how to cater to people who know how UPUA works as well. What Matt and I present is a visionary platform that can be realistically accomplished in a year that will not only improve student life for undergraduates in the year that we are president and vice president, but also beyond and down the road, which is so important, especially with student government. We're not about making headlines, we're about making a difference, and that is why you should vote for Smith Miller and Matthew Smith on April 1st. We appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming out.
At this time, I would like to conclude the second UPUA presidential debate. I would also like to remind you, and also that all of you should remind your friends, since most of you are here with campaigns, that everybody should vote on April 1st. Polls open at 6 a.m. You're able to vote anywhere from any computer. Go to vote.psu.edu. Thank you all for coming.